So by the time you see this, I'll have actually just played at Cable Festival, or at least a couple of weeks prior to this probably. I'm actually filming this before I play, just a week before, but you'll not see this till after. And it's the first gig where I've used my bass effects AE Modular rack, or my AE bass rack as I've been referring to. Basically this is an AE Modular setup to do my bass effects. It brings a couple of pedals in on a Stomp IO, and then the rest of it is all either effects or processing patches to create effects from my bass guitar. I've used it quite subtly in that gig, and I'm actually going to be changing those effects again to expand it all, to add some new things, to develop effects further. So I'm not getting into that today. We'll save that for another video. That'll be part 2. But today I want to talk to you about the thing that changed all of this, the absolute game changer, and that is being able to MIDI control all of these effects with a foot switch. Now, MIDI is a new thing in the AE Modular, and it actually started out with the MB1 and MIDI modules from Wonkystuff. And it's that MB1 and the MTR8 MIDI trigger module that are at the heart of all of this. It allows me to take the latched MIDI notes from this foot switch and turn them into gates to turn on and off various effects patches. Now you could actually use this beyond the effects, and we'll get into that later, to just change sequences. All that's doable. We'll get into that in a little bit, but before we do any more, I want to just show you the ins and outs of how this patching works, how I'm patching the MTR8 to change effects. So let's get into that now. So the MIDI for me starts with a foot switch, which I'm going to draw very poorly at the bottom of this page. It's a 6-button foot switch from Blackstar, and it's a MIDI foot switch. So we'll just annotate this as we go. So MIDI foot switch. I'm going to give myself a little bit more space here. So it sends latching, and this is the important word, MIDI notes. So this foot switch sends latching MIDI notes, and that's the important thing here, because if we sent momentary MIDI notes, what we're trying to do would only happen while you were holding the foot switch down. We don't want that. We want it to work that I can hit the button and walk away, because I've got 1,000,001 other things to do. So the fact that I can set this switch up, so this foot switch, to have these buttons be latching MIDI notes. For example, it could be that it's C5, C sharp 5, that's a horrible sharp sign, D5, D sharp 5, E5, and F5. That's effectively how it's working. There's a MIDI note assigned to each of these switches. But we need this to turn into gate signals. And that's where the Wonkystuff MTR8 module comes in. So this module, which actually is about the same size as I've drawn it, it's that small. We'll call this the MTR8. This has 8 gate outputs, and this basically takes the MIDI in from this foot switch like that and turns these into 8 gate outputs. So when that C5 goes on, the one for C5, let's just kind of go like this just now for ease, so on. It actually runs from bottom to top, but we'll ignore that. That's an error on my part. But let's just say it takes each of these notes and takes it in and turns it into a gate signal. But the gate is open, is on, so you've got the gate signal as long as that button is on. So if this was momentary, it would only turn that on while the button was down. The fact this is latching means that it sends a continuous gate signal to this, and it'll output a continuous gate on whatever note you push down. And because this module is designed for using with drum modules and things of that like, it is actually polyphonic in the sense that I can have multiple of these buttons on and send multiple gates out at once. This has been crucial to making this work, and ultimately this is the only reason I can do the switch in the way I am just now. So let's take it to the actual signal path now. So let's take our audio here. So we've got our audio there. So we're going to take our audio in,
So let's say it's the bass signal coming in from the Stomp IO. So we're past the Stomp IO stage, we're coming in. What we're going to do first is we're going to buffer it, because we're about to split this signal in two. And buffers always give you a cleaner, stronger, more usable signal when you split them. Sadly, I've only actually got 4 buffers in my rack just now, so there are 1 or 2 patches that might have to go without just now. But as long as the majority is buffered, we'll get nice strong signals. So we get 2 signals coming off of this buffer. One of them is going to head straight to a VCA. Like that. And the other one is going to go into whatever effect module or chain of modules I want to use. And then it's going to go to a VCA. Like that. So we've got one signal that's completely clean and one that's going into the effect and then the VCA. And then the output of these 2 VCAs is going to hit a mixer. Okay? So we've got a mixer here. Like that. And both of these VCAs are going to go into the mixer, and then from there we'll get our audio out. Like that. Okay? So, here's the thing though. These VCAs are closed as standard. And why would we want the clean and the effect? Well, if we use, as I'm doing here, the quad VCA from Wonkystuff, so we'll just annotate that. So that's the quad VCA module. Okay? If we use that, what we can do is take this gate signal and feed it into the effect VCA, which means when we turn this on, we will get the sound coming through this effects VCA. As long as there's a signal going into it from the gate, we'll get sound through this one to the mixer and at the output. But we're still not going to hear this one. And when this is off, we won't get any sound at all because both the VCAs will be shut. What we're actually going to do is flip-flop these 2 VCAs. So we'll want when this one's on, this one's off. When this one's on, this one's off. And the way we do that is we use the real advantage of the quad VCA. It has an inverted CV output. So we can actually take the inverted output, so inverted gate, and this is just gate, and feed it into this one. So when this sees a gate signal, this doesn't. When this doesn't see a gate signal, the inverted version sends a gate signal to this. So we're actually flip-flopping these 2 VCAs to get either the affected sound or the clean sound. But the thing is, those outputs, we'd have to combine them still. So this is why we need a mixer afterwards to basically give both of them the option to join. There's maybe a way you could do this with logic gates or, you know, some really complex patching. I've found just even the passive mixers from the basic mixer module, they do the trick for this. So simple, even passive mixing will work for this because it's not really taking 2 signals, it's taking the option of either of those signals and patching one in. It's not both, it's one or the other flip-flopping. So this is our FX switching patch. And that was horribly written there. So this happens for every effect in the chain. So we'll explain how this happens in just a minute. The exception to this effects patch rule is the one we use for the tremolo switching. So we'll put this at the top here. Tremolo switching. So just like the other one, we're using a VCA. So we'll put a VCA here, okay? Now this time we don't have to split or anything like that. We're just going to patch through this VCA. So we've got the audio there going in, and we've got audio out, okay? So we've got that there. Now what we need to do is take a CV into this. Now we're actually going to use 2 VCAs to do this. Like that, and we're still going to mix it together afterwards. So this is running exactly the same way in that sense as before, but we're mixing CV now. And we've got a problem here because the quad VCA cannot mix CV. The quad VCA is really only for audio signals. That's its main function. However, the 2 VCA from the Tangible Waves format, the one that even comes with your basic starter rack, can be set up to process DC signals or CV signals. And there are some mixers out there that can process them. Not all of them. So you have to be careful, pick your mixer wisely and pick your VCA wisely for this, because we're processing CV, not audio signals, and not all of them can do that. So we've picked ones that do work though, okay? And we're also going to take another module off to the side here, the 2 attenuator CV module, okay? Like that. So what we're going to do is on one of these VCAs, we're going to put an LFO, okay? So we're going to patch an LFO to it. Now that LFO, when it's passed into this VCA, will effectively, well, let's ignore the VCA just now even. If we take this LFO and ignore the VCA mixer thing just now and just imagine it's open, this LFO will effectively be turning the VCA on and off, creating a tremolo effect. But when we don't want that, we want the VCA to stay open. If we just stopped feeding the LFO in, it would close up again and our sound would be silent. So what we're going to do is we're going to take just our positive 5 volts there as our other input. What we're effectively going to do is take this and feed it straight into the VCA as a control voltage, which means it will be permanently open. We can scale this down. So we could actually use, let's just put a little asterisk beside this, because 5 volts is very strong. So we could feed that through an attenuator to reduce that and dial it into your specific VCA, because it may be that your VCA doesn't like full on 5 volts. Like I say, there is a 5 volt and 2 volt switch on most sequencers because depending on what you're doing, they'll all react differently. So this could be reduced through an attenuator. But effectively, the plan is you take a strong signal to open the VCA and keep it open, maintain it open. Kind of like our gate signals do with the foot switch. But this is where it gets interesting. We're going to take that foot switch, so the MTR8 that we spoke about, and we're going to send one of the gate outputs. So I'll annotate that. So one of the gate outputs goes into the 2 attenuator CV and it inverts it. So again, we're dealing with this inverted gate. So what we want is the gate to send to the VCA for the LFO when we turn the switch on. Okay? So we're effectively taking a feed off of this to turn this one on from that switch. But again, there will be an inverted gate from here. So we take this from there. So we've got the gate there and the inverted gate there. Again, allowing us to flip-flop between these two things. So when we don't send a gate on the MTR8, we're using the inverted signal of that, which sends to the VCA, the mixer, and on. So the VCA will be on all the time when this switch is off. When this switch gets engaged, we take that strong gate to there. And that feeds the LFO into the mixer and then to the VCA. So we're allowing ourselves to swap between constant sound or an LFO affected tremolo effect. Pretty much the same as the effect switching patch, except we'll have to be careful of these things because we're processing DC. And in the end, we end up with this, which looks utterly chaotic. But don't worry, it's actually quite simple. So like we said at the start, we take our bass into an envelope follower. that allows us to take CV as an envelope. Sorry, that allows us to take our bass as a control voltage envelope to process our effects and to use it to control effects rather. We may or may not use that though, but it does allow us to gain stage well. Then we go into the Stomp IO, which has my effects pedal chain in it, taking the signal down to the right level for the pedals and then back up to the right level for the modules. From there we go on our first buffer. And you notice one half of the buffer goes to a VCA controlled with inverted control voltage. The other half goes up to my drone mixer. In the loop of the drone mixer, we have a ring modulator and a grunge filter. So that's acting as one big effect, those modules together. Then from there we go into that VCA, which has the normal control voltage. Again, we're saying CV, but it's really a gate, but we'll say control voltage for ease here. Then those two VCAs, the one without the effect and the one with the effect, go into a mixer, we'll flip-flop between them, and then that mixer feeds to the next buffer. Again, buffer splits, VCA 2 with inverted control voltage. The signal goes to the phaser. The phaser feeds its own VCA with its own normal control voltage. Again, it mixes, we flip-flop between these two things, and then the next thing, buffer again, VCA with inverted control voltage, signal goes to the delay to its own VCA, we mix again, flip-flop between, to the buffer. You're probably getting the point here now. The buffer has a VCA on one side, inverted control voltage, feeds to the reverb. Reverb has its own control voltage, has its own VCA with its own normal control voltage. Again, reverb VCA and the clean VCA feed into a mixer, then the buffer again. The last one that does this, we have a split for the VCA with inverted voltage. TBD has a VCA with the normal voltage, control voltage even. We flip-flop between those to a mixer. So that's all those effects, Drone X, phaser, delay, reverb, TBD, in their own loops. After the mixer this time though, we run to a VCA on its own. This is that tremolo patch that I'll be testing out. Again, there's always room for this not to work properly, but we'll be testing this out. So this is a VCA. From here we have that flip-flopping LFO circuit. So we have from the MTR an inverted control voltage for just a standard constant voltage. Then we have the normal control voltage for the LFO. We flip-flop between these two, so we either have an affected tremolo sound or a constantly open VCA because of the constant voltage. They mix together, flip-flop between them, and that controls that one. Then after that, into the filter, which is the state variable filter, out via the 4IO. Easy peasy. That makes sense? It didn't to me for a long time, so don't worry if it doesn't. The next thing to do is to get patching.
So now that we know how it works, we're going to play some sound examples. Like I say, we're not going to get deep into the effects patching because we're going to do that in another video once I've repatched and added a few new things. We're even doing pitch to MIDI on the new version of this. So we'll come back to that in a second part of this video. But what I want to really stress is that you can use any foot switch with latching MIDI note messages, and you can turn that into gates to control anything. It doesn't have to be effects. The way we patched up the tremolo could be used to control anything. You could be sending those sequences into a VCA to control an oscillator. You could be controlling a whole patch, a whole voice, and switching between two voices. There's a lot you could do with this sort of thing. So I highly recommend exploring these foot switches, or even using other hardware switching options, the trigger pads on MIDI controllers, on MIDI control keyboards, these sorts of things, to send MIDI notes and to use it to switch patching. Because we don't, as it stands, have like an effects loop module. You've maybe seen the Molten Modular effects switching module. It's got a better name than that, but I can't remember what it is. But you've maybe seen that from Bafako. That's the Robin Vincent one, to allow you to use it like an effects loop that can be bypassed and do all sorts of other things. I'm effectively faking that with this patch. And it's just a few modules really to change one effects patch. So I highly recommend trying this out if you're going to perform with it. Obviously, if you can come up with additions to this that make it better, leave them in the comments, let me know, because this is an ever-changing thing here. So we'll cut to some footage showing off some of the existing effects in the rack, showing how I swap between them with this. Hopefully you might like some of the sounds. And like I say, if you do like this, let me know in the comments. Let me know what else you'd want to see from the effects rack or any of the other AE things I use. Let me know in the comments, because I want to do more videos like this. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please hit like and subscribe, click on the bell icon and all that other stuff people ask for. If you want to support what I'm doing, you can do all of that. I also have my music on Bandcamp and on YouTube, all under Gavin Forbes Music. If you want to see more of what I'm doing, so if I've got gigs, new music coming out, all those updates happen over on Instagram, also Gavin Forbes Music. And until next time, thank you very much for watching and keep working on those bass faces.